Coming up, how the world's most melancholy band created a massive crossover pop radio hit. Did they sell out by crafting said catchy pop ditty? Or is mainstream popularity the unavoidable price for reaching new audiences? The story behind a universally recognizable upbeat song that ushered the harbingers of gloom into the public psyche. Next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you enjoy classic rock, classic pop, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, you are going to love this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below to get the story straight from the artists themselves below. And if you click right up here, you can see our brand new merch. We also have a Patreon where you can access rare content and exclusive videos. Consider supporting us either way. It really does help us keep this channel alive. Back in 1988, The Cure had their first US Top 40 hit with Just Like Heaven, of course from their 1987 album Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. It also reached the top 40 in the UK, France, and New Zealand. Just Like Heaven proved to be a perfect song and was accessible to a larger audience from a band who had toiled for years in the underground. Then in 1989, Disintegration featured The Cure's all-time biggest hit, Love Song, that peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was held at bay only by Janet Jackson's number 1 hit, Miss You Much. Still, Disintegration would reach number 12 on the US charts and it would go on to sell 3 million copies worldwide. And then in 1990, The Cure released a collection of remix hits with the LP Mixed Up. This collection bore just one new song, Never Enough. That was released as a single. It rose all the way to number 1 on the US alternative airplay chart. There was undoubtedly some high expectations for The Cure's next album. Their notoriety was growing and they were primed to expand beyond their core fan base. Meanwhile, the musical landscape was changing dramatically in the late 80s going into the early 90s. Mainstream music seemed to be degrading. Boy bands and overproduced dance music, it ruled the day. What's new? You're the reason why I sing this song. While these songs were catchy and they marked a certain moment, whenever I hear CNC Music Factory or Right Said Fred, it definitely takes me back to a certain place. But it's not a destination I'm sure I want to spend a lot of time visiting. You know what I mean, and I do my little turn. But as the 80s wrapped up and 1990 began, music was having an extreme identity crisis. We talked about it before. They were still stuck in the 80s, but not the good 80s. Emerging out of this musical identity crisis, alternative, the catch-all handle for music genres not getting mainstream airplay, that began ascending to the forefront of the public's awareness. College rock bands like Jane's Addiction, The Replacements, REM, so many more, they started gaining commercial traction. Of course, the Seattle grunge scene would then explode going into 1991 with Nirvana's Nevermind powering its way to the forefront of society's collective consciousness. It Smells Like Teen Spirit. Other bands like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Mudhoney, they became begrudgingly poster children for the grunge movement. But their success showed that Nirvana's popularity was more than an aberration. And there was a seismic shift occurring in the music industry. For Gen Xers, this period headlined by Smells Like Teen Spirit. It was akin to the Beatles performing on Ed Sullivan for the first time. And the rising outcry of the so-called alternative genre became a spokesman for the downtrodden and the outcasts. So we began to see the extinction of glam metal, along with all the gloss and indulgence of the big 80s. Out with the old, in with the new, as they say, and in came the rebellious ferment of a generation who reveled in not fitting the mold. It was in the midst of this shape-shifting musical climate that The Cure released Wish. You got to remember that 1989's melancholy masterpiece, Disintegration, a monolith of an album, if there ever was one, was still not too far distant in the rearview mirror. So to some degree, Cure fans were caught off guard by the happy-go-lucky feel of Wish and its most popular track, Friday I'm in Love.
About you, it's Friday, I'm in love.
Now, as we get more into this discussion, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the brand that I always wear. Another thing that I love about Zenni is how lightweight these frames are. They're light as a feather, comfortable. You won't even know that you're wearing them. Check it out today at zenni.com. So at a time when other alternative musicians were fighting against popularity, The Cure were turning heads for embracing it with their most pop-centric album to that point. And from time to time, Robert Smith would admit to regretting it. It was definitely a far cry from their albums like Faith or Pornography, 17 Seconds. As many of you know, The Cure have gone through a number of lineup changes through the years. In September 77, Peter O'Toole, who had been the band's vocalist for several months, he moved to Israel to live on a kibbutz, collective agricultural community. Shortly after auditioning some other lead singers, Robert Smith, vocals, guitar, he took the role, thankfully. Pearl Thompson played guitar and keyboards, Michael Dempsey was on bass, and Lawrence Lowell Tolhurst played the drums. Over the next decade, the lineup changed often, and in fact, by the time of the release of 1989's Disintegration, The Cure were on their 13th iteration, I believe. Some band members like Pearl Thompson and Simon Gallup came and went, came back again. But up until Disintegration, only Robert Smith and Lowell Tolhurst had remained permanent fixtures from album to album. However, by the mid-1980s, Tolhurst was struggling with substance abuse, and his place in the band was becoming tenuous at best. By the time The Cure released Disintegration, he was gone. February 1989, Tolhurst's exit was made official and announced in the press. Smith would attribute Lowell Tolhurst's dismissal to an inability to exert himself and issues with alcohol. To quote Robert Smith, he was out of step with everything, had to just become detrimental to everything that we do. End of quote. Tolhurst's ousting resulted in Roger O'Donnell becoming a full-fledged member of the band. That actually left Smith as The Cure's only remaining founding member. However, Roger would quit the band in 1990 and was in turn replaced by the band's guitar tech, Perry Bamonte, who also played keyboards. So by the release of Wish in 92, The Cure's lineup had seen a lot of shakeups. This latest shakeup perhaps signaling a new direction for the band. At this point, the nucleus consisted of Robert Smith on vocal and guitar, Pearl Thompson on guitar and keyboards, Perry Bamonte on keyboards, Simon Gallup on bass, and Boris Williams on drums. Wish was The Cure's 9th studio album. It was released on April 21st, 1992. It reached number 1 in the UK, and it went to number 2 in the US. It yielded the international hits High,
As high as I can't get that high,
and Friday I'm in Love.
it's too late, but Friday never hesitate.
Friday I'm in Love was released as the second single. That was in May of 92. Friday I'm in Love represents one of the largest departures from a band's perceived ethos that you're likely to ever hear or see, in my opinion. According to Robert Smith, it is a throw your hands in the air, let's get happy kind of a record.
Sunday always comes too late.
Anyone who knows The Cure or has ever seen Robert Smith can already understand the odd juxtaposition that we're facing here. But in truth, with all the happy and poppy elements within the song, the silly dancing, the whirl around, kicking it up your heels, the joy of it all, it still feels authentic. It's why the song is an earworm and drew so many people into the circus tent. I mean, let's face it, Friday I'm in Love, While not a work of genius in generalized terms, it's very much a calculated song. It's got a very cool chord progression. I couldn't believe no one else had used it, and I'd venture to say that it took The Cure to the masses more than any of their previous songs. As I understand it, Friday I'm in Love was originally recorded in the key of D major, but the version on record was inadvertently sped up by a quarter tone. Robert Smith would admit that it was an accident. Actually, in Guitar Player magazine in September 92, he said, and I quote, "I was playing with the Verispeed pitch control, and I forgot to turn it off," end of quote. Luckily, he liked the effect that resulted, and it became the song that we hear today. Now, jumping into the lyrics, apparently the opening line, "I don't care if Monday's blue."
I don't care if Monday's blue.
That's a reference to the New Order hit Blue Monday.
Do I feel? Tell me now, how should I feel?
It's pretty interesting because remember when I was interviewing Peter Hook, the former bassist in New Order? He told me he thought that The Cure had taken some inspiration from Blue Monday for their song The Walk. With Friday I'm in Love, the song originally started out less peppy. Robert Smith explained, and I quote, "Originally it was at half speed, very downbeat, but then bassist Simon Gallup started playing it faster and faster until we hit a tempo that felt comfortable. And suddenly I realized it was a pop song." The others were going, "If you want this on the record, Robert, you've got to write some happy words to it." So I wrote the whole thing in about 5 minutes. When I came back in the control room, the others were genuinely surprised at how happy it was. They thought I was going to sing something a bit more morose over it, and they were waiting for the twist. End of quote.
Break my heart on Thursday, doesn't even start.
In an interview some years ago, Robert Smith said that he remembered driving home one Friday afternoon to have the weekend off, and he started to think of this really cool, great chord sequence. Only he was about 20 minutes away from the studio, so he actually turned around and went back to the studio. Everybody was still there, thankfully. Robert and the band actually recorded it that Friday night. So from then on, it was just called Friday. Then when he came to do the words for it, Robert thought, why don't I do a song about that Friday feeling that he had? He said, and I quote, "It's a thing you have at school, and lots of people work at jobs they don't really enjoy. So that Friday afternoon feeling is something that you all look forward to." In 1997, Robert Smith further explained the origin of the lyrics. He said, "I met the others in the group outside this pub near the studio. It was a Friday afternoon. I'd been thinking, has anyone ever done the days of the week? I felt really good about the idea, and I wrote this song on the journey." End of quote. Robert Smith also said of the song in Spin Magazine, "Friday I'm in Love is a dumb pop song, but it's quite excellent actually because it's so absurd. It's so out of character, very optimistic, and really out there in happy land. It's nice to get that counterbalance. People think we're supposed to be leaders of some sort of gloom movement. I could sit and write gloomy songs all day long, but I just don't see the point."
Watch the walls instead, it's Friday, I'm in love.
Robert also said, without reservation, "Genuinely dumb pop lyrics are much more difficult to write than my usual outpourings through the heart." Apparently, Robert went through hundreds of sheets of paper trying to get words for this record. He said, and I quote, "You have to hit something that's not cringing, a simplicity and naivete that communicates. There's a dumbness that sort of cracks. We've always done pop songs. It's just sometimes they're way too down, sort of desperate."
Whenever I'm alone with you.
Friday I'm in Love, huge hit. Peaked at number 6 in the UK, making it The Cure's second biggest hit in the UK to date. Lullaby actually peaked at number 5.
Can you strike
In the US, it reached number 18, but man, it was much bigger than that number 18 peak. I remember Top 40 radio playing this nonstop. I mean, the only other Cure song to do better on the US Hot 100 was Love Song. That peaked at number 2. Now, the album Wish, it was certified platinum on June 16th, 1992, just over 2 months after its release. Now, by comparison, Disintegration certified platinum after 6 months. Mixed Up took 2 years, and Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me took 3 years to certify platinum. Wild Mood Swings, the 96 follow-up to Wish, has yet to certify platinum at all, so it was the fastest-selling Cure album to date. The Cure were in their heyday with Wish, undoubtedly led by the success of Friday I'm in Love. Robert Smith would say, Wish was our most successful album ever. I was really surprised. I was looking back at the figures and I was really shocked. Wish was the one Cure album that has sold constantly over time. It went to number 1 in virtually every country, but then it dropped and I thought that was it. But it gained the strange second wind that we'd never had before and will probably never have again. Probably from people hearing Friday I'm in Love and wondering which album is that on. That's from Robert Smith directly. The popularity of Friday I'm in Love was a double-edged sword for The Cure. Many who discovered them through MTV, where the Friday I'm in Love video received massive play. They figured they were a new wave pop band, leading Smith to denounce his new devotees. Actually, Robert Smith nailed it when he said, and I quote, "The people who like Friday I'm in Love aren't actually fans of The Cure. They're not the ones who buy my records," end of quote. I remember how frustrating it was, believe me, when it started to get massive airplay. I was in high school. I was part of the outcasts who were needlessly bullied, ripped on for our love of new wave music. Bands like Joy Division, The Smiths, Depeche Mode, New Order, and The Cure, we were called all sorts of names. All of a sudden, the jocks and the cheerleaders, all the popular kids, were walking around singing Friday I'm in Love. I wanted to die. At that time, I hated Friday I'm in Love. I mean, this was our music, our precious music. How dare they give something to the popular kids to sing? Robert Smith has had a love-hate relationship with Friday I'm in Love. In one interview, he said, "We had spent such an awful long time to get well known. When it happened, though, I found it very uncomfortable. For a long time, I didn't like certain songs because I thought, you're to blame. You made me popular. Friday I'm in Love is a perfect example." Although surprisingly, while promoting the compilation Galore, Robert Smith actually called it one of his 3 favorite Cure singles ever. That surprised me. Friday I'm in Love has been showcased on a number of movies and TV shows since its inception in the 90s. Most recently on Morning Joe and Ghosts, and then on a regular show iZombie, amongst others. On Spotify, it's actually The Cure's biggest song, 375 million plays and counting. It's also been covered by Australian singer Natalie Imbruglia, who sang it on her 2014 album Mel, which featured her takes on songs from male artists.
It's Friday, I'm in love.
It's also showcased in the 51st Date soundtrack, sung there by Dryden Mitchell.
Even start, it's Friday, I'm in love.
So the question that inquiring minds want to know, did The Cure sell out with Friday I'm in Love? Well, did REM sell out because they wrote Stand?
And in the place where you live, now face no think about
It's every bit as catchy and poppy. Now, if you would have asked me if The Cure had sold out with Friday in 1992, I would have said definitely. Like I said, I hated the song, very perturbed with one of my favorite bands ever for, writing something so happy, so fluffy, something that I heard the Mean Girls singing as they skipped down the school halls. I remember my friends felt exactly the same way I did. In fact, I remember my friend Ben said, "What's next for The Cure? A Christmas album?" It wouldn't surprise me. I thought that was really funny. I hated Friday I'm in Love, but I love Wish. I thought A Letter to Elise was extravagant. I love the first single, High. It was during this time that I actually saw The Cure live for the first time. It was the summer before my sophomore year. Me and a few friends saw them at the Delta Center. and I was elated beyond words. All these years later, I appreciate Friday I'm in Love with a new set of ears. You know, it's a good pop song. Decent Cure song, good pop song. It stands the test of time. I mean, clearly no one compelled Robert Smith to write Friday I'm in Love, and though it stands in stark contrast to much of the rest of the Cure's catalog, it is nevertheless a genuine representation of a part of Robert Smith and the Cure. I mean, even if we don't instinctively jump to the conclusion that the Cure can put a little sunshine in our lives, yes, Robert Smith and company have made a name for themselves as a dark, brooding, and introspective lot. But let's be honest, no one can be switched to melancholy autopilot 100% of the time. I mean, all of us are complex and multifaceted beings, prone to experience both the bitter and the sweet. Even the gloomiest of us feel happiness from time to time. To me, Friday I'm in Love, it defies our expectations when it comes to the Cure and challenges us to look beyond stereotypes and to view the world from a more nuanced perspective. And maybe, just maybe, it really is okay to be happy sometimes, even if you're Robert Smith. Leave us a comment about the Cure and this infectious pop song from 1992. What are your memories of the song and the music video? Do you think they sold out with this song? What is your take on it? I just look at selling out so much differently as an adult. I don't think it's as big a deal as I did back then, not at all. Anyway, if you dig our videos, please subscribe below. We'd love to have you. And check us out on Patreon for even more content. There you're going to find exclusive interviews, and you can become an honorary producer. Help us curate this important history. Your support really matters. It really does. And it helps our mission to keep this music alive. So until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.